Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hey everyone, good to be here.
Yeah, welcome to our next Casual Conversations podcast, in which we want to discuss the topic of growth through awareness and expansion. And yeah, this is a very interesting topic that, again, like the last few days came through for us. Like, oh, we've been really working with some of these we on our journey. We've been really working with this growth through naming things, through becoming aware of things and naming them, and then creating that expansive process within us that we want to discuss what that means and how that works. That's the topic for today.
It's like shifting realities in a
Yeah.
sense. When you become aware of uh, something in your space or something in your system that hasn't been acknowledged, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you can, by naming it, you can shift your, uh, yeah, you can like take a leap.
A growth leap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to give you some examples of this, some areas of life where this really works, where you can really sort of gauge this that we're talking about. Like, for example, there's parts of me in my process that are still very underdeveloped. So imagine us as beings, human beings, having a collection of parts of our being that have different age reference points and different maturity levels and different skill levels and different developmental acquisitions. So we have parts of us that we access sometimes that feel very young, right? That feel like, oh, this is a part that doesn't feel like very developed. I feel very scary.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast to, if you spatially reference yourself in contrast to a life situation or a scenario or an event or an emotion, then you feel a certain age. You feel like, oh, I feel like I'm back when I was 15, when I was experiencing that, and it really put a lot of paralysis and fear into me. And I feel that fear and paralysis again, and I don't know how to overcome that feeling, in contrast to taking this step or to feeling this emotion or this event or scenario. So what happens is, as we have, like, as we talked in these earlier podcasts, as we have this ladder, this scale that we climb in resonance on, when you get to these higher resonances, the pressure on some of those lower resonating parts, or the parts of us that still haven't fully integrated and matured and haven't healed yet, those
Mm-hmm.
those parts begin to weigh more on our system in the moments that things feel bad. The contrast between our awareness now, in my case as a 40-year-old, compared to a part of me that's only 15 that has a struggle, is becoming a weight. And that weight
Mm-hmm.
requires a certain acknowledgement, a certain pinpointing, if you will. Here it is. This is the part that's showing up now. I see it. I acknowledge that it's here, and I allow that to be there fully. And then all of a sudden, it gets that acknowledgement, which is one of the key components of growth and awakening, is acknowledging things, because in acknowledgement is also the truth of allowance and compassion and seeing and naming and being with and allowing it to become part of your awareness. And then it all of a sudden
Yeah.
can grow, which, one thing before you said, then that happened to me the other day, where Marlu, you helped me with a part that was that
Mm-hmm.
age of 15, and I didn't see that was going on, but it was a very difficult moment for me that I didn't, that recurs because I didn't see what was going on. And then Marlu naming it helped me to actually release. And then all of a sudden, I energetically felt like I grew up all of a sudden. And Marlu felt that too, that shift in age.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those examples that I wanted to share on that.
Yeah, and it can be, it's like maybe a difficult concept to grasp,
Mm-hmm.
and because you're, yeah, you're aware of your being, you're doing your in your normal day, or you're doing your thing, and but in essence, we have sometimes parts that are not really integrated
Yeah.
because of um, um, things in the past that happened that are still in a system that might have like stunted our growth,
Mm-hmm.
or we felt very depressed, and we've never been acknowledged in that place. Sometimes we need, a lot of times, or some of us need acknowledgement from others to like grow through that, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're if you're if you haven't not have that haven't had that, then in your energetic like blueprint in your being, um, there are traces of those moments still there, and it keeps you, um, maybe in a confusion,
Yeah.
because you feel a part of you feels still like 15, and maybe you're a grown man and you're or a grown woman, and then feel like, why is this, is these feelings that are supposed to like have needed to like grow up,
Yeah.
or lived through, but you haven't really lived through some of the
Exactly.
ages,
Yeah. Yeah.
that feels like strange. But when you have a very aware person, who can notice that and sense that, you can like shift instantly through those ages, and like take like, it feels like you're taking a quantum leap, and
In time,
your
literally.
system can like catch up in time,
Yeah.
and you feel more present in for you at a 40-year-old,
At the now moment of my real time life, let's say. Yeah.
you don't feel so shattered in a way.
Yeah, splintered off and divided between moments in time. Literally, what happens. It's also very much a time function.
Yeah.
Because we live life, but we're really living an age in each moment.
Yeah.
And certain ages get stuck or trapped because of trauma or something that stunts our growth and development, literally. And if we don't bring our higher level, our later on higher level of resonating awarenesses back down to those earlier moments, to bring a little bubble of compassionate, loving acknowledgement to that moment, that moment stays in that place of not having received that support that may have not been there in whatever situation happened or whatever happened, and it kind of really blocks our growth. So this is in the area of like more trauma and disconnection and maybe abuse and all kinds of things that happened that many of us have experienced, that most people as a general rule aren't even aware of, because you need to have a very high level of awareness in order to be able to see that this is actually taking place before you can pinpoint it and it can shift. And otherwise, these underlying dysynchronicities, if you will, these dysynchronous moments in time stay locked in our systems, and we actually suffer at some level the leakage of our life force and our energy to those moments in time. So this is where that becomes very important as part of our growth. And I know that's a very advanced concept, even for spiritual principles, that's very advanced. But it's good to name. I think it's good for you guys to begin to become aware of that for yourselves if you want to grow on that path. Yeah, so that was one thing that I wanted to mention about this. Now we have some areas of life that this you may not think where this is also possible, and one of those is a scenario that Marlou can mention maybe a little bit about, for example, being in. So we're now in an apartment building with an apartment, and we feel the energies very much especially when we're here together, but Marlou feels it also on our own. The energies of this apartment are and the people within a building, within an environmental building. Honestly, I always had a bit of difficulty with believing that the environment, and I still have that question in me, like, is the environment really that important compared to, it shouldn't really be important, in my opinion, because
how much can an environment
impact you,
influence you where you are,
including the whole story about
a living space,
but radiation pollution, EMF, and all of that. I mean, it does have. I know that these things have an influence. I've experienced it and I know it. But what's interesting is there's also certain energetic dynamics, obviously, that happen within an environment, and the emotional charges, let's say, that individuals living within that apartment carry with them imprint a certain space. And even the building itself, I would say, the structure and the imprinting of the building and how it's built has a certain level of it's like a waving feeling to me. Like it has a consciousness, it has a liveliness to it, but it has a resonance to it as well. And a structure in a building, like, you know, when you go, this is going into a story here, but when you had, I don't know, shamanic tribes or something, tribes in the past, like, you know, traditional tribes and things, they used to, in living in stony mountainous areas and stuff,
Yeah.
it's very common and normal for some of these tribes to connect, you know, in Mexico and stuff, to connect with the rocks. And if you want to pick up or move rocks, to ask if there's permission from the rocks, it's very normal for them to do that, because
Yeah.
they realize that those rocks, if you do that without permission, you're actually violating the space or the territory of the consciousness of these structures, just changing it.
You're shifting the energetic
And the land.
Land.
Yeah, so
feeling of the land.
If you just apply that principle, whether you sort of believe that or not, but just apply that principle to the buildings and the structures, they're actually, you know, some of these tribes say that the walls, the house, it has memory, it is imprinted with memories of what has happened to it, which is why a zone or an area or an alley or a city or a place can have a feeling associated with it, because it's imprinted with an experience that it's had, whether it's really dark or really light. So from that perspective, you could say that naming certain things that are going on, pinpointing again, like I was mentioning earlier, something that you're feeling in the building, which you may think is yours, may not necessarily be yours. And again, by naming that, and advanced topic here, if you even feel acknowledging it from a place of neutrality and unattachment, and then allow the resonance that you may have with that feeling. Like, let's say there's grief in the building from loss, and you feel that grief in yourself. Acknowledging that and seeing that actually releases some of the charge for yourself and from the building. And I have other scenarios, but I wanted to just, as I'm talking a lot now, these are some of the areas of life where you can apply this.
Yeah, you have to be aware. If you're sensitive, you're picking up more than
your own field,
than you're often aware of. Like, for example, I can walk by a building, like in front of a building, and I can pick up the whole energy of the building. And if I'm not there and I feel it in my body, so I feel it like it's me, it's like I can like get the whole imprint of the building, and I just feel it in my whole body. So if you're empathic, you can have that too. You walk into a supermarket and you get this imprint of the whole place and the whole, you can feel it. It's can be very intense.
Yeah, and sometimes you even have to watch out that you don't walk out of the supermarket with more than just your groceries, but with all these new imprints that you didn't want.
Yeah,
from all
exactly.
these people that have imprinted
and
stuff
the
on
people you have met.
Yeah.
But also this piece, there's a lot of like in buildings, there's a lot of like energies that can build up. Where you can like walk by and then suddenly you feel your state changes, and then you can, at least I can sense that something has happened there, or people have worked there, or done some things, or there has been a party and there was a positive or maybe negative energy, you can all like pick it up. But also with these things, you can make these time shifts, these quantum leaps, these energetic loops that can linger on in a building, like this energy that's like never seems to shift, and you are very good at to see that, because for example, one time we were in a forest cafe.
I was about to, I picked up, I want to share that too, so you can share that.
Yeah, we were sitting in this forest cafe, and it was a beautiful like little cafe, and
in the
we
forest.
in
Yeah.
the forest, and
Yeah.
it was like a new kind of thing, and but we were sitting there and we were just like, um, something is off in the energy here. And then Lionel mentioned that the forest was very sad. There was
Mm-hmm.
this very deep
Melancholic feeling.
melancholic feeling in this forest. And in that moment, it was really strange, but it was like if the trees were finally acknowledged
Mm-hmm.
by someone who saw that what was happening, because there were all, people dumped their stuff also
Mm-hmm.
in forest, or forest where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people come around, the imprint of the people becomes like more intense than the nature can recharge itself.
Yeah.
So we were sitting in that cafe, and um, and there was this like the forest was crying. It felt like the forest was
Yeah, but
crying.
also
And
the
then you
people,
mentioned it,
also the people in the cafe were
the
feeling pretty down. I
affected.
remember they were
They were
feeling
in,
like
yeah,
slow, and they were not very happy, and
the
the
waitresses.
waitresses felt
Yeah,
very depressed and stuff. It was like a very melancholic feeling in
yeah,
the whole place, and
the
that was why
place,
I
and
noticed it so much. And then I
really
named
interesting.
it, and then all of a sudden this shift happened
Yeah,
instantaneously, and the whole space lightened up. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden there was movement in the flow of the cafe,
yeah.
and the
Waitresses
waitresses
were,
started laughing and
yeah,
smiling and
happy.
joking,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden there was like an instant shift. It was very noticeable, and
yeah,
that was actually the first time I really noticed, like, wow, the power of acknowledgement
yeah,
in the moment when you're coming from a place of unconditional, from that higher place, and you see something and you kind of sort of point down at this thing going on.
yeah,
It releases and it comes up, it buoys up just like a ball underwater. It comes up to the higher natural resonance of where it should be, where it naturally is, which is that joyful, happy place, which is actually our natural state, which is the same for us
yeah,
as human beings. You pinpoint the things that are dissynchronous,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden it comes back.
yeah,
That's actually a good way of describing awakening and
yeah.
growth. It's not really, you're not really doing anything. You're not really changing. Like you're not removing anything really in particular. I mean, it can be from certain perspectives, but
Oh,
you're really just acknowledging the things that aren't working so that they can naturally come back into the balance, into what is working, what is your natural state, which is but you just become more refined in that natural state. But that's another topic for another day. But I thought that was very powerful, that moment.
yeah.
So I
It's
wanted to
really
share that.
strange. It's like, um, when this you can do with, you can like work on yourself a lot, but if you're becoming more sensitive and aware, you notice in your environment you can have influence with
Mm-hmm.
your, because you have more like a higher frequency impact, um, then the you get to see more into these contrasts that are happening around
Mm-hmm.
you, and even in buildings and places,
Mm-hmm.
that you like can begin to like awaken those places also in
Mm-hmm.
a way. You're like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, yeah,
but
remembering through to a more higher state, or
yeah,
it's more freeing, you know.
it's freeing. But there's also a downside to this that I want to bring in, or at least I would perceive it as a downside, but it may not necessarily be. But this is a question that I'm with, is like what you just said is like you move up this ladder to these higher frequencies, which we've really done a lot of work in. Okay, what I notice is one aspect is, you said, you hone in on that sensitivity, you become more sensitive and empathic, so you feel more, so you have a wider range of feeling, and that makes it, in that sense, wider, like the underlying natural tendencies and patterns that you have become more amplified and become uh, more in your face, let's say.
Yeah,
So you have a greater responsibility, because you're naturally resonating at that higher level.
yeah,
You need to have a greater responsibility, because it literally is like the saying, you have more, with great power comes great responsibility. It's the same here. It's with greater frequency levels and resonances becomes a greater responsibility to manage the balance of that, because and that's what I find sometimes really difficult about this journey, and also what makes me feel very isolated and separated and alone with many people that either don't understand or think that they understand, but they don't really understand. And then it becomes a question of, well, if you try and explain it to them, it makes it feel like you're in your ego, trying to make you feel better than them at a higher level than them. But it's not about that. So I'm trying to cut through all of that with love and compassion here. But at the same time, obviously, this is our podcast and we want to share this. So we want to also have the ability of being direct and honest, and this is another, maybe this is a little off topic, but there's another group of people in the spiritual realms that don't believe that we have levels, and that's often very much like, oh, there's no levels, we're all equal, and so on. We get all this, and here I'm going to be a little bit judgmental, but we get this sort of,
if you wouldn't have levels, you wouldn't even notice your growth.
yeah, exactly, because growth is per definition a ladder with steps. So there are levels in that sense, and so we need to get that concept out of our systems. It's like, and I'm going to be a little bit pricking here. It's a little bit this left-wing socialist agenda, like everything's equal and we're all equal and there's only love and there's and then if you think that you have a level higher, then you're in your ego and stuff. But it's not really that. It really, that's just, that then becomes a sabotaging strategy to actually taking the path to going to those levels. And in that sense, a little bit more the American model, which is a little bit more about growth and performance and success, a little bit more like that. But I wouldn't call it that because those are material things. But it becomes a little bit like, it could become competitive, but then that's your ego perhaps. But it's more about, do you want to become the highest version of yourself? And do you then want to go through the motions and the difficult challenges and adversities to make yourself and shape yourself into a better version that's more in alignment with who you really are, with the highest versions of qualities and characteristics possible? Then that's a growth path with a ladder that you need to take steps in. It's more about that, right, from within, I would say. Well, this is a little bit off topic, but for some reason that came up to share, because it's always very difficult to keep it to just one topic and not share things that relate to it. But anything you want to add to that, Marlou?
I'm thinking about how to tie it all together.
How to tie it all together? Yeah, even I don't know anymore.
Because sometimes you need to have be seen in certain things before you can go to a higher level, and you find yourself stuck.
There'll be something I wanted to share about as well. Good you bringing that up.
You know, when you're sometimes it feels like a mental kind of mental thing or something, that you stay on a different level and you think you're not moving forward, and you keep like cycling like back to those experiences that haven't been integrated yet, and those can be still in the field, just like a house can like feel a lot the same. When you cannot mention what's really going on, you feel nothing is changing. And sometimes if you have people who are on the same journey as you are aware, maybe they can help you figure out what's going on, you know.
Yeah, and it's also this acknowledgement piece that Marlou brought us back to, which we talked about earlier. This podcast, this acknowledgement piece is very important, because often we are told, again, this is one of those things where I have so many paradoxical, nuanced differences in concepts. Then generally we are told cliche in the world or spiritually, like money isn't what makes you happy. Well, I disagree with that as well, and I'll talk about that sometime. But acknowledgement here, acknowledgement is often said that we shouldn't search outside of ourselves for something that we need to give ourselves, right? Acknowledgement. So it's like, yeah, but you're looking for acknowledgement, or you're looking for something outside of yourself, but you don't really need it. And then we use that as a spiritual principle to guard against the feeling of being dependent or needy on others, right? But here's the rub. If you, like Marlou was just sharing, if you have parts of you that, like my 15-year-old part that came up the other day that we described, doesn't receive the acknowledgement in the way that it should have received it at that time from the external environment, which has a social responsibility in our early life to give us those healthy imprints and give us the love and the support that we need to grow for ourselves. If that wasn't there, the trauma that stays in place at that 15-year-old level is the lack of acknowledgement from the outside. And per definition, the lack of the acknowledgement from the outside where that trauma happened, in my case, I was very rejected in that age type. When I was in puberty around 15, it was a lot of rejection. So when that is a lack of acknowledgement, obviously. So what happens is then it searches, that part searches for the healing of that acknowledgement that wasn't there.
Yeah.
That is very difficult to see for yourself and give to yourself if it's dependent on the mechanism of healing it through what you didn't receive from others.
Yeah.
So then in this case, Marlou served for me as the outside acknowledger of seeing me within that part, so that I received the healing, so that I now could integrate that for myself. And that's where acknowledgement does serve. And not only does it serve, it's key and crucial to healing, because this may seem like a small, simple example, but it actually becomes a very amplified version of a daily reality that keeps on circling, or not, maybe not every day, but frequently comes back to loop. Like Malu was just talking about, these loops. And they come back and they come back and they come back, and you start to think, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Why do I feel so bad? What is that part that wants, what is that thing that wants something that I don't know what it is? Because you often don't know what it is that is needed in those moments. So we need others to mirror us, to mirror to us what those parts are that we're not integrating for ourselves. And that's where it is critical that we don't do this process alone. Because as you go to those higher levels, it becomes, like we were saying, more responsibility. It becomes more difficult. And we need support through others to be able to find what those parts are. And because no matter how good you are alone, and I mean, I see a lot by myself, but even I can't do it all alone. And so, and it's just crazy making. It is just very, very difficult to do alone. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say about the acknowledgement piece. So we have just a couple of more minutes here. Marlou, do you want to share any more pieces related to this theme of, what was the topic? It was awarenesses and growth and expansion. So we're still talking about how to grow and expand through awareness and naming things, right? This is kind of the topic that we wanted to talk about. And that's a way of growth, isn't it? This is the way of growing. Really, it's pinpointing things and growing through them, and allowing things to let go and come to the natural higher resonances.
And it is I don't know, we're these energetic beings,
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that aren't living that way, or really aware of. That's not about the words you're saying, but what is the frequency, where it's coming from. And this is just so important, because you can also really get stuck with yourself in pieces. You feel like it has become sometimes like this ball of energy, or an identity, or like a state of mind that makes you feel like your whole world is only like that, and never changes and stuff. And my experience is that it can, when someone else can catch a higher truth than yourself, because when you're stuck, you have some help there that can help you break through or pierce through the untruths there. It can suddenly break open your whole world, and you can make these huge shifts. So
yeah,
it's very it's just like this forest. It can like instantly change from sad to joy, and where those beings, in a way that can change also. It's like a building can change like that.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
forest can change like that.
Yeah, it's instant. It's amazing, right? It's all the space of contracted feelings that become really heavy or dense that we see everywhere in life. Everywhere we're in a soup of a reality with all of those feelings. If you have the potential to come with a lot of light, with a lot of brightness, with that high frequency, and you name that, and you really focus on it, you give it the power of focus and a focused attention and acknowledgement, it can really shift instantly, and it can change the whole resonance of the whole space. And that is the ultimate, really determinant of your reality, is that if you allow that awakening to happen and that natural spontaneous essence to merge with, I would say that's the divine essence of who we are, that we all carry with us. If we allow that to merge with our reality fully, we really open up the abundance through everything that there is around us, and we begin to experience that. Even though I must say, I don't always feel like I'm there, but that's another topic. But I'm just describing what I'm picking up as how I'm seeing it, and how I would like that to become more and more of my reality. And I wish that for you as well. This seems like a perfect moment to end, but there is one more piece that I wanted to share. See if that fits here now still, and also today. Yeah, there's just one little piece I want to finalize with, and maybe you want to share something as well to finalize with. But what I wanted to say is another little piece to this topic is that we can quickly become also too spiritual. And this is also what I want to guard against, because awareness is a very broad, abstract concept, right? And it can become very much like, and I see many people do this, we can turn it into something very spiritual and go off into stories, and then think of idealistic scenarios, and then bring in all kinds of eclectical beings and all kinds of stuff, and it becomes this whole thing. And I don't want to judge it too much, but I do want to bring it back to something concrete and grounded. It's always important to come from a level of, can you encompass, like we did in the very beginning of the podcast series when I helped Marlou with a masculine and bubble of clarity, so that things become clear and come back to a point, and you come back to a grounded level of yourself. Because otherwise this path and journey can quickly become overwhelmingly vague and abstract, and we can lose references to the here and now, where things really matter. And so that's another key piece that I can just as recommend to those of you that are on this journey of awakening. It can become very difficult and abstract with concepts, feelings, energies, imprints, realities. It can become very difficult, and probably most of you are confused already.
That's not
not what you want.
It's not how we do things.
No.
It's very grounded in the change you want to change in your life.
And in your body and in the now as well.
Embodied.
Yeah.
If you feel shitty in a building, you want to change the energy now.
Exactly.
And you want to walk through it and feel the shift and feel it in your system.
Yeah. Rather than saying that the building may, maybe it's this, and maybe there was
the most powerful, when you feel depressed or whatever, or you have relationship issues or whatever.
Yeah.
You want to have someone helping you and make the shift in that moment in your life, and not go in a meditative state and then
bypass the whole thing.
Nothing really happens. It's very difficult, because how the shifts happen for us, it's really in a moment now. I might go in the car, drive to the supermarket, come back, and I can feel shitty about something that happened. And then if you want, you can bring in that moment, you can bring in a higher awareness of what actually happened than your maybe you think about with your mind, or you've always say this is how things go in my life, and it never ends, and it's always is like this. And then I always know that Lionel, is really good at pinpointing what is happening in a moment, and we can shift it now, and then
Yeah.
it will stay shifted, it will change, and it's like, that's like very earthly grounded spiritual work, and
Exactly.
nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
And
Very well
it's
said, I think.
very, very like laser sharp.
Yeah, and yes, yeah. So I have nothing really to add except for the fact that sometimes people then, and I like the meditative being with everything space. That's another aspect that I want to talk about some other podcast, which is definitely a big part of our reality of being us. But we can also bypass the laser sharp focus in the present moment on something that's going on and shifting it in the moment.
Yeah.
And that requires the more that ladder that I was talking about, coming from those higher resonances, getting the clarity and the strength, and really naming specifically what's going on, and then allowing that to be there, acknowledging it, like we were saying, with compassion and love, even better. And then it can transform and it can shift our reality instantaneously. That is really mastery, and for some of you, that will be the path you want to go on. For some of you, that may, I don't know if that will be for everyone, but the point is, this is what we're bringing out because this is our journey. So this is what we'd like to share with you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that for today, we'll end it here. And I really enjoyed this podcast. I enjoyed speaking about this. It feels good to me to speak about these things and not to keep them all internally. And
it is fun, and then it's something different.
Something different, yeah. So I hope you got something good out of it, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.